our top stories trending across the globe. Flooding displaces 10,000 around China. Fire incident in Tokyo, 4 injured. RSF forces attack Khartoum North, 1 medical worker killed. Hello and welcome to the World News right here on VOP TV. My name is Esther Wachuku. We'll begin the world news right here where the National Climate Center disclosed today that Beijing reported 9.8 straight days when the temperature exceeded to 35 degrees Celsius. Such a streak was last recorded in 1961, decades before most Beijing residents had air conditioning or even fans. A lack of rainfall may be contributing to the heat, with the typically dry capital receiving even less than usual this year. Authorities stated that while temperatures have since moderated, Monday's temperature at midday was 33 degrees Celsius. They are expected to rise again this week to as high as 39.6 Celsius in Beijing and other parts of the country. Meanwhile, more than 10,000 people were urgently moved to safety due to flooding in the central province of Hunan, the Jianghe's Emergency Management Bureau on Sunday. Around 70 houses collapsed, 2,283 were damaged, and farm fields were flooded. Losses so far have been estimated at least $79 million. To the north, in Jiangxi Province, Zambezi County, authorities reported the worst flooding in 50 years and washed out roads and damaged homes. No deaths have been reported from the floods thus far. The heat this year has been unusual, although China has regular summer flooding. 11 provinces, around half of China's land area, were expected to receive heavy rain in coming days, mainly in the humid south. Now in 2021, more than 300 people died in the central province of Henan. Record rainfall inundated the provincial capital Zhengzhou on July 20 that year, turning streets into rushing rivers and flooding at least part of a subway line. China's worst floods in recent history were in 1998, where 4,150 people died, most of them along the Yangtze River. Four people have been injured in a blast and a blaze in a central Tokyo building, with footage showing flames and smoke emerging from a second-floor business. The fire started in a building in a restaurant area of the bustling Shimbashi district around 3:20 p.m. A fire department spokesman disclosed to reporters that the sound of an explosion was also heard, and a total of 32 fire trucks are at the scene. Officials, however, are investigating the cause of the fire. A male eyewitness disclosed to public broadcaster that the sound was deafening, as if something huge was dropped from the top of the building. He also stated that pieces of paper were scattered all over at the nearby intersection. No other information, including the cause, is yet available. While in France, French President Emmanuel Macron is to meet on Tuesday with some 220 mayors of towns that have witnessed riots that broke out since the death of the 17-year-old Nahel M at the hands of a police officer. Now seeking to suppress a violent arrest that has swept across major cities the past 5 nights, Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin on Sunday announced that 45,000 police and gendarmerie officers will be deployed across France for a 3rd consecutive night. The 17-year-old victim, identified only as Nahel M, was shot at point-blank range by a police officer on Tuesday morning in the Paris suburb of Nanterre. He was driving a yellow Mercedes when he was pulled over for traffic violations. Police initially reported that he was shot after driving his car at the police, but this was contradicted by a video that rapidly went viral across social media and was later authenticated by reporters. The footage shows the 2 policemen standing by the stationary car, with one pointing a weapon at the driver. The police officer then appears to fire at the car, abruptly drives off before gradually coming to a stop. The incident has sparked 5 nights of violent unrest in the capital and cities across France that have seen protesters clash with police. Now, in order for us to talk in-depthly on this, I have in the studio Barrister Eze Oluche, who is a public affairs analyst, also a global affairs analyst. Barrister, Good afternoon and welcome to the VOP World News.
Thank you very much for having me in your studios.
One would have actually thought that the situation in France is unexpected, being the fact that it's one of the European countries that seem to have experienced democracy to a certain level and has a way of coordinating itself. For 5 days now, or 5 nights, France has experienced what you may term anarchy. Now, this situation is concerning this Nahal young boy who was shot by the police. Now, one would say that in this part of the world, such an incident is not strange, because on a daily basis, these are the kind of scenarios that we experience. If you look at what transpired in Edo State, where a particular young man was handcuffed on the floor and was run over by police officers, whom up to now investigations are ongoing concerning that. But let's look at France and the fact that this happened. At what point did this become the boiling point for the country?
Now, France, like most other countries in Europe, which have benefited massively from raping African countries, taking away the resources, and now becoming a center of attraction for refugees or migrants from Africa, always maintains a dual kind of society. A society whereby the indigenous population, the Caucasians, have everything almost at their beck and call, and then the migrants or the immigrants, whether legal or illegal, who now reside in those countries, tend to have the rough end of whatever is available. Like in France, you realize that where the migrants live, whether they are Algerians, Africans from Cameroon or the Francophone countries or even Nigeria, where they live is always on the underserved sides of the cities. In the city centers, not much facilities, very harsh policing. The likelihood of these migrants to be dealt with or accosted by police is always higher. So this is what has been happening over the years. And that ordinarily by itself is like a bomb waiting to explode. And so all that it takes for such to explode into the kind of riotous situation you're seeing is an incident that is captured on video that you cannot tell stories about. No. This killing of this young man, which is now causing this riot, initially, the police had said the young man was about running away with the vehicle, trying to run over the police when they now shot at him. Unknown to those rascal policemen, there was somebody videoing, and then he caught actually that the police actually had the guns on the boys on the windscreen. Meaning
it was premeditated.
Yes, I mean very close. It was premeditated. And then once the vehicle, who wouldn't be scared when you have somebody with a gun on your windscreen? And perhaps the young man just moved and he was killed before he even left the vicinity. And his car ran straight and crashed. And the police, not knowing that this video was available, went about lying to the public. And then when this video came out, they were just shut up.
Now, this led to incidences where police vehicles were burnt, policemen were attacked, police officers were attacked. In fact, in very brutal conditions. We saw heavy looting taking place, we saw banks being burnt, and we saw a lot of convergence. Now, a couple of persons or critics have said that this is beyond the killing of that particular young boy. There could have been other issues too that have culminated in this. Now, since the emergence of French President Emmanuel Macron, a couple of issues have been involved. Yeah. Critics have, kind of talked about the policies that he implemented, and they've termed it to be unfriendly. A couple of people think he's not firm enough, as a president to control France or to rule France as it may be. But he has currently gone to meet a couple of about 220 mayors who have experienced this kind of clash and see how they can come together to quell the chaos. But this is a statement. What do you think this attitude, this outcry of the people of France actually states?
If Macron likes, can meet 1,000 mayors. It's not going to help him in this instance. Because like I said, this is pent-up rage built up over the years. And the media so far has been downplaying most of these atrocities committed even by the French state and the French police against French citizens. So now this atrocity captured on video has emboldened people to say, okay, enough is enough. So this is this is like the NSAS we had. There are things that you will see, the visuals alone will spur you to action. So what you are saying in France is people are saying enough is enough.
So if the French government have been censoring the kind of content that goes out there, is it weird or awkward that the government here censors what goes out on our media and on social media as well?
No, I mean, governments all over the world try to censor information. They try to do information management. They try to make themselves look good despite the the mess going on in the country. So it is global, not even the French alone. This, what we're saying, happens in Britain, happens to a very great extent even in the US. And it's not by accident that Twitter, Elon Musk, in a visit to France during the midst of this crisis, announced that there will be reduction in the number of tweets you can see a day. In fact, people are beginning to say that that reduction in Elon Musk in the number of tweets you can see a day is directly linked to what is going on in France, because the announcement was made soon after Elon Musk had met the Macron. So it is not in doubt that governments try to manipulate the media, but it only makes things worse. Because people will now rumors will begin to fly around. People will now begin to say, okay, it is actually 100 instead of when only 10 were shot, people will now say it is 1,000. And then that inflames the masses more. And that makes the police, the state even use more force, more violence, which will only relate or get a reaction of much more rioting. So it is what is going on in France is going to be catastrophic if the government does not come out and actually address the issues, which is declare that it's acknowledged that the state has for too long been racist. And not just, like I keep on saying, it's not just France. They will say all the beautiful words they have to say, but the reality is that the France, Britain, even the US, they operate a racist system. Their so-called democracy has a lot of oddities about it, and they actually don't have rights to come and lecture us on democracy.
Let me butt in there. So
yes.
We have a situation where their African counterparts have said that what goes around comes around.
That's right.
Meaning that what France is experiencing is basically karma, and so we shouldn't be surprised. And they've not shown any form of sympathy.
That's right.
Now let's come back home to a recent, let me say, verbal altercation between a representative of the Nigerian presidency and the EU's report on the February 25 presidential election, where they talked about the fact that the elections were not transparent and they were run through, there were several skirmishes which were obvious. Now, a presidential spokesperson for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu actually said that the European Union's report was not properly done, and he called it a poorly desk job done to be published. He also reiterated the fact that the European Union did a limited observation of the February 25 elections, and so on that limitation was what they used to give their result. He also stated that at what point or what rights does the European Union have to give its own, would I say, supposed judgment or conclusion on how the elections were run? They have no moral right, they have no moral standing to give whatever representation or give whatever conclusion they have. What do you think he has a point in the statement he made? Because he's been lambasted on Twitter so far since the statement was made.
Dele Alake, who is the character that made that statement, actually has no moral standing to make those statements.
Okay.
Why I say doesn't have the moral standing to make it is that you accepted funding from the EU for elections. INEC accepted support, funding from EU and all that, and they made commitments. So if EU was good enough for you to accept funds in millions of euros to conduct elections, then they also have a right to tell you where you went wrong. And what the EU said is not just an EU affair. There were Nigerian observers also. There were Nigerian voters who saw the kind of rape of democracy that occurred. So that is why
Dele said those few incidents in polling units shouldn't make them make such a wholesome conclusion on the February 25 elections.
Nigerians know when a man is making political statements. I mean, we were few incidents where people were everywhere, and the issue was when after the vote took place, you manipulate the election results. The IRF did not work. It was not uploaded by INEC. So it was not few. That's why I say Dele Alake, who made that statement as the presidential spokesman, has no moral capacity, rights to make those comments, which were actually bloody lies. The reality is that the EU statements regarding the elections in Nigeria are factual, are supported by Nigerian CSOs and Nigerian voters who were on the polling units and know that they were robbed by the election results that were announced.
With the situation that has occurred in France, do you think it's a lesson for other European nations?
Well, would they learn? Because you see, what these European nations don't realize is this. You support dictators in Africa, like France, Macron. Macron is a very close friend to the Cameroonian leader, to the Gabonese leader, and these are leaders who are sit-tight rulers who have destroyed their countries. And the young men who you see in France are those who escaped from the atrocities of these leaders Macron supports in Africa. So they're already there in France, aware of the harm you are causing them. So at the slightest moment, they will tell you, okay, you pursued us from our own countries, and we are here, and you're still maltreating us. That is the consequence France is suffering. France is also has not been very clean in terms of how its efforts to address terrorism. There has been news reports that France has a hand in supporting Boko Haram in Nigeria. There has been, in fact, in Mali, for instance, the government had to give France a quick notice, very short quick notice, that it should get out of Mali. That they have intelligence reports linking France to the terrorists, to the terror Akim, and France has been kicked out of Mali. So all over, France has a very dirty and odd record. So it thinks it can foist wrongs in other countries and be clean in its own country. No. One of these days, these things will crop up, and that is what is happening in France. Like you rightly said, the law of karma is hitting France. Let Macron and France be good. Let them have an altruistic foreign policy, and then it will reflect domestically. You cannot support evil in Africa. The Cameroonian president has been there for more than almost 40 years, and is still a very close ally of France. The Congolese leader is the same thing, and is still a very close ally of France. And France is manipulating the economies of African countries that has pushed African migrants into France. And when they even come there, you now treat them as second-class citizens. It will work.
Wow.
So France has to clean its task, be good to itself and to posterity. Then perhaps France will have peace. Until then.
Well, it took this unfortunate death of this young man for us to get to this point, and for people to see most of this. Brother Ezelicha, I do appreciate you on the World News right here on VOP TV. Thank you
very much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for your time. And still at the World News, we have whereby a military force of the Rapid Support Forces assaulted a hospital at Khartoum North over the weekend, resulted in the assassination of a laboratory specialist. And the situation in Khartoum state conflict-affected areas has become dire, with a staggering 66% of hospitals out of service due to various factors such as shelling, forced evacuations, lack of medical personnel and aid, including power outages. In a statement, the steering committee revealed that a military force affiliated with the Rapid Support attacked the Martyrs Hospital in Al Roshab, north of Khartoum North. The medical group reported that the heavily armed force assassinated laboratory specialist Musab Abdullah Ibrahim and set fire to the entire laboratory. Additionally, they physically assaulted health workers and patients present at the hospital. Eyewitnesses at the scene stated that the paramilitary force brought one of its commanders who had been wounded to the hospital. However, upon the commander's death, the RSF elements turned against the medical staff and patients, resulting in tragic events. In a joint statement, the resistance committees, emergency room group and change and services committees in Khartoum North condemned the RSF's assault on medical personnel, which caused severe injuries and forced the sitter's only operating hospital to be closed. The paramilitary forces recently launched a media campaign to improve its image in Khartoum, including videos showing civilians receiving humanitarian aid and the return of looted vehicles and belongings. The civilian population remains skeptical of the paramilitary forces. An earthquake with a 6.2 magnitude struck off Indonesia's Papua province on Monday, adding there was no tsunami potential. The epicenter of the quake was at a depth of 33 kilometers on land. The local police disclosed that in person of Ignatius Beni Adi Prabowo, however, said that the quake was strongly felt in Jayapura, the capital of Papua, adding there were no immediate reports of damage or casualties. Indonesia straddles the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, a highly seismically active zone where different plates on the Earth crust meet and create a large number of earthquakes and volcano activity. Now, as basic food commodities disappear from supermarket shelves in Zimbabwe in the midst of an inflation crisis, President Emerson Mnangagwa has threatened businesses, accusing them of creating artificial shortages. Addressing an election rally of his ruling ZANU-PF party in Bulima district, stated that Mnangagwa stated businesses have increased prices of basic goods since the announcement of general elections. He also accused some in Harare of stocking up basic commodities in their warehouses. In May, the government lifted all restrictions on the importation of basic commodities amid skyrocketing prices of bread, flour, cooking oil and mielie meal. But prices of basic food have continued rising, with products like sugar, flour and cooking oil disappearing from shop shelves in the capital. The rise of prices is mainly attributed to the country's annual inflation rate, which has more than doubled from May to June to more than 175%. With a weakening local currency, Zimbabwe is among the countries with the highest food inflation rates, meaning many Zimbabweans struggle to put food on the table. Meanwhile, all eyes will be on Russian President Vladimir Putin this week, expecting him to make his first appearance on the world stage since the Wagner insurrection threatened his steel grip on power. Putin is scheduled on Tuesday to attend a virtual summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a broadly pro-Russian regional security grouping led by Beijing and Moscow. In the brief chaotic insurrection, Wagner, a private mercenary group led by warlord Yevgeny Prigozhin, took control of key military facilities in 2 Russian cities as thousands of fighters marched toward Moscow, where the Kremlin deployed heavily armed troops to the streets. It seemed as if civil war was on the verge of breaking out. A secretive deal abruptly ended the rebellion, with Wagner fighters pulling back and Prigozhin sent to Belarus. But 1 week later, much remains unclear about the inner workings of the deal, the fate of Wagner, and what this means for Putin's regime. Meanwhile, President Biden will meet with Britain's King Charles III in his upcoming trip to Britain, which will be his first visit since Charles was crowned king in May. The White House disclosed in a statement on Sunday that Mr. Biden will be traveling from July 9 to 13 to Britain, Lithuania for the NATO summit, and then Helsinki, Finland, a U.S. Nordic Leaders Summit. The White House stated that the president's first stop will be in London, where he will meet with King Charles III and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to further strengthen the close relationship between both nations. Mr. Biden has met with King Charles in the past before he became monarch and before Biden became president, including a 2015 summit or meeting at the White House with then-President Barack Obama. Biden attended Queen Elizabeth II's funeral last year, and he has spoken with Charles several times since he took the throne, including after the death of his mother. Now, the Ministry of Defense disclosed on Sunday that Israel will purchase more than 24 F-35 fighter jets from the United States in a multi-billion-dollar deal that will expand the Middle Eastern country's fleet of the world's most advanced stealth aircraft by 50%. The deal for 25 jets is valued at some $3 billion and is to be financed through U.S. aid to Israel as part of the agreement. Both Lockheed Martin, the manufacturer of the aircraft, and Pratt & Whitney, the maker of its engine, have committed to involving Israeli defense industries in production of components. The ministry states that the procurement will see the Air Force's current fleet of 50 aircraft grow to 75. The announcement comes as tensions between Israel and Iran climb, and as the Israeli Air Force has conducted airstrikes into neighboring Syria. And that is a wrap right here on the World News on VOP TV. My name is Esther Mwachuku. To subscribe to our YouTube channel at VOP TV Live, share and comment on our social media handles as well at VOP TV Live. Up next is VOP Business Show.